The rain hammered down in relentless sheets, turning the abandoned shipyard into a maze of slick shadows and glinting steel. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the skeletal remains of cranes that loomed like forgotten giants over the Oregon coast. Officer Mara Hensley gripped the steering wheel of her department SUV, her knuckles pale against the black leather. The call had come at 3:47 a.m. A tip, anonymous and cryptic, about the old Halverson Marine warehouse. Most would have dismissed it as a prank, but something in the dispatcher's voice, a tremor of unease, had pulled Mara from her bed and into the storm. She glanced at the rear VY-EW mirror, catching the glint of Kodiak's eyes in the K-9 compartment. The 5-year-old German Shepherd mix shifted restlessly, his black and tan coat barely VY-sible in the dim glow of the dashboard. Kodiak wasn't just her partner. He was her compass in the chaos of cases that refused to stay buried. Tonight, his low whine told her he sensed something even before they'd reached the site. "Easy, boy," Mara murmured, though her own pulse quickened. The warehouse waited ahead, its rusted walls swallowed by fog and rain, a tomb of secrets nobody had dared disturb in years. Mara killed the engine, the silence sudden and heavy. She stepped into the downpour, her boots sinking into the gravel mire. Kodiak leaped out after her, his specially fitted cadaver detection vest snug against his lean frame. At 80 pounds, he was a force of controlled energy, his nose already twitching, sampling the air. The anonymous tip had been maddeningly vague. "Something's under the floor. You'll know when you see it. No name, no callback number. Just enough to drag her out here on a hunch and Kodiak's uncanny instincts." Detective Caleb Warwick's unmarked sedan pulled up beside her, tires crunching gravel. He emerged, his trench coat flapping in the wind, a thermos of coffee clutched like a talisman against the pre-dawn chill. "Hensley," he greeted, voice gruff but warm. "You sure about this? Storm like this, we're more likely to drown than find anything." His graying hair was plastered to his forehead, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the warehouse with the wariness of a man who'd seen too many dead ends. "Caleb, when have I ever dragged you out for nothing?" Mara shot back, though her tone carried a teasing edge. She trusted Warwick implicitly had been her mentor when she joined the force a decade ago, back when she was still pro-VYing herself in a department skeptical of female K-9 handlers. "Kodiak's antsy. That's enough for me." Warwick grunted, uncon VY said, but willing to follow her lead. "Tip mentioned the East Wing. Said the concrete's off. Probably just some kid messing with us, but with the Halverson case." He trailed off, the name heavy between them. The disappearance of Nathan Halverson, owner of Halverson Marine, had haunted Port Elias for 15 years. A titan of industry, vanished without a trace in 2010. No ransom, no body, no closure. Just a void that had swallowed his family and left the town whispering theories ever since. They approached the warehouse, flashlights cutting through the mist. The main door's padlock had been smashed, likely by vandals, and it creaked open with a groan. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the ghosts of diesel and rust. Skylights, cracked and filthy, let in slivers of stormlight, illuminating a labyrinth of abandoned machinery and coiled cables. Kodiak moved ahead, nose low, his claws clicking faintly on the concrete floor. Mara's flashlight beam caught faded lettering on a wall. Halverson Marine building the future. The irony twisted in her gut. "Place gives me the creeps," Warwick muttered, his lights sweeping the shadows. Halverson owned half this coastline back in the day. Built the docks, the marina, even the community center. Then poof gone. Car found at the Seattle airport, no flight records. Wife swore he wasn't running from anything, but he shrugged. People don't just vanish like that. Mara nodded, her mind already on Kodiak. The dog had paused near a pile of rusted barrels, sniffing intently before MOVYing on. She'd seen him like this before, methodical, deliberate, filtering out the noise of the world to chase a scent no human could detect. At 29, Mara had spent 7 years in the K-9 unit, 5 of them with Kodiak. He'd been a rescue, pulled from a fighting ring before the department took a chance on him. Too wild, they'd said. Too unpredictable. But Mara saw something else. A Sir V.Y. Vor who'd fight for the truth as fiercely as she did. Warwick's voice broke her thoughts. Tip said the East Wing's floor was poured later than the rest. Could be nothing repairs, maybe. But Halverson disappeared right around the time this place shut down. If there's something here, it's been waiting a long damn time. They reached the East Wing, a cavernous space cleared of debris. Portable work lights, left by a recent inspection team, cast stark pools of light across a section of concrete that stood out like a scar. It was smoother, paler than the surrounding floor, lacking the cracks and stains of decades. Mara crouched, running her fingers over the surface. No expansion joints, she noted. This wasn't part of the original build. Warwick's jaw tightened. Inspector flagged it last week. Demolitions set for next month. If we're going to check it, it's now or never. He hesitated, then added, "We've had false leads before, Mara. Psychics, drunks, even AK. 9 sweep and 14 that turn up zilch. I don't want to get your hopes up." "My hopes aren't up," she said flatly. "Kodiak's are." She unclipped his leash, her voice steady. "Kodiak, seek." The command was like flipping a switch. Kodiak's demeanor shifted, ears up, tail rigid, his entire being honed to a single purpose. He began a grid pattern across the floor, nose skimming the concrete, sampling me in VY Cybele currents of scent. Mara watched, her breath shallow, every muscle attuned to his movements. Warwick stood back, arms crossed, his skepticism a tangible weight. "He's trained for long-term decomp," Mara said, more to fill the silence than a con VY NCE Warwick. "Bones, tissue, even decades old. Found a hiker's remains under 6 feet of dirt last year. Never alerts unless he's sure." "How sure?" Warwick asked, eyeing Kodiak as the dog paused, nostrils flaring. 99% in testing. No false positives in the field. She didn't take her eyes off Kodiak. "He's not just sniffing for death, Caleb. He's reading the story it leaves behind." Kodiak's pace slowed as he neared the pale concrete. His tail stiffened, a subtle signal Mara knew well. He circled, sniffing rapidly, his body language shifting from curiosity to certainty. Then, abruptly, he sat, staring at a 3-foot patch with an intensity that made Mara's skin prickle. He looked back at her, then returned his gaze to the spot, Unmo VYing. "Passive alert," Mara said, her voice low. "He's found something." Warwick stepped closer, frowning. "Could be chemicals. This place was a shipyard, solvents, oils, you name it. Concrete's a sponge for that stuff." Kodiak stood, moved a foot to the left, and sat again more insistently. Then, as if to erase any doubt, he began to paw at the concrete, claws scraping with a sound that echoed like a warning. A low growl rumbled in his throat, not aggression, but urgency. Mara's heart thudded. She'd seen this only once before, on a case where remains had been buried deep under a barn floor. "He's doubling down," she said, kneeling beside him. "This isn't ambiguous, Caleb. He's saying it's human, and it's here." Warwick rubbed his jaw. "Uncon V. Wine said. One dog's Biha VY, what doesn't justify tearing up a floor. We need a warrant, equipment, a forensic team. That's a lot of resources for a hunch." "It's not a hunch," Mara snapped, her patience thinning. "Kodiak's located body's radar missed. If he's this certain, I'd bet my badge on it." Kodiak's scratching grew frantic, foam flecking his muzzle. Mara grabbed his collar gently. "Kodiak, enough. Show me." He stopped, circling the spot again, pausing to press a paw precisely on the concrete before locking eyes with her. The message was clear. "It's here. Don't ignore me." Warwick sighed, his resolve wavering. "All right, I'll call Judge Torres for an expedited warrant. But if we do this, it's by the book, full EVY Denke protocols, no shortcuts. If your dog's right, we'll find out. If not, we've got a hell of a report to write." Mara nodded, relief mixing with tension. "We'll stay. Kodiak won't let this go." For hours later, the warehouse was a hive of controlled chaos. Forensic technicians had set up a perimeter, their cutting equipment humming under portable lights. Rain still pounded the roof, a relentless drumbeat that matched Mara's pulse. Kodiak lay at the edge of the marked concrete, sphinx-like, his eyes never vying the spot he'd flagged. Warwick coordinated with the team, his earlier skepticism replaced by a grim focus. "We'll cut in 6-inch layers," the lead technician explained, adjusting his goggles. "Anything non-concrete, we stop and switch to hand tools. No contamination, no mistakes." The saw's scream pierced the air, dust rising despite the water jets. Mara stood back, her hand resting on Kodiak's head, grounding herself in his calm. The team worked with surgical precision, vying concrete in chunks. At 10 inches, the saw stuttered, hitting something solid but not stone. "Hold!" the technician barked, shutting off the machine. He peered into the cut, his face unreadable. "We've got material change. Looks like plastic." They switched to chisels, working with agonizing care. A sheet of black plastic emerged, heavy-duty, the kind used in construction. As they peeled back the first layer, a faint, unmistakable odor hit the air decomposition, muted but undeniable. Mara's stomach clenched. Kodiak whined softly, his job done, but his instincts still on edge. "Human," Warwick said, his voice flat as the team exposed more of the plastic-wrapped bundle. The medical examiner, Dr. Elise Navarro, stepped in, her gloved hands steady as she directed the uncovering. Layer by layer, the plastic gave way, revealing a skeleton adult male, curled in a shallow grave. The bones were stained but intact, the skull bearing a jagged fracture at the back. "Blunt force," Navarro said, pointing to the damage. "Single blow, hard enough to kill instantly. Probably a heavy tool hammer, maybe a wrench." Mara's eyes caught something glinting among the remains of a silver chain, half buried in the dirt. The technician lifted it carefully, revealing a pendant engraved with NH 25 years of vision, 2008. Nathan Halverson's initials. A gift from his employees, noted in his missing persons file. "It's him," Warwick said, the weight of 15 years settling in his voice. He turned to Mara, his expression a mix of awe and gratitude. "Your dog just cracked the coldest case in Port Elias." As the forensic team continued, a sealed plastic pouch emerged beneath the remains. Inside were papers, waterlogged but legible ledgers, bank records, invoices. Warwick squinted at them under the lights. "These are internal audits. Looks like someone was skimming millions from Halverson Marine. Nathan must have found out." Mara crouched beside Kodiak, offering him water. He lapped it up, but his eyes stayed on the excavation, as if guarding the truth he'd uncovered. "How's he do it?" Warwick asked, watching the dog. "After all this time, under concrete?" "It's his nose," Mara said, stroking Kodiak's flank. 300 million receptors, wired to a brain that lives for scent. Decomp releases compounds putrescine, cadaver and that linger for decades. Concrete's porous, those molecules seep through. He can smell a single part per trillion. No machine comes close. Warwick shook his head, impressed. "You two are something else. How'd you end up together?" Mara's smile was faint. He was a street dog, busted out of fighting ring. Too stubborn for standard training. I needed a partner who'd think, not just obey. Took a year to earn his trust, but once I did. She trailed off, watching Kodiak nudge his empty bowl. "He's saved me as many times as I've saved him." The next 2 days were a blur of EVY denke and breakthroughs. Dental records and DNA confirmed the remains as Nathan Halverson's. The skull fracture matched the profile of a specific pipe wrench, and the ledgers pointed to embezzlement funds funneled through a shell company called Coastal Build, created months after Halverson's disappearance. The kicker came from the pendant, a partial fingerprint preserved in the engraved grooves. It matched Victor Crane, Halverson's CFO and confidant, who'd inherited the company when Nathan vanished. Crane's alibi for the night of the disappearance had been airtight a gala with 300 guests. But the timeline was murkier than the original investigation had assumed. Halverson hadn't been reported missing until 3 days later, GIVY in crane a window to act. The concrete, analyzed by a forensic geologist, contained a rare additive traced to coastal build Supplier Company Crane had quietly controlled. Mara and Warwick confronted Crane at his penthouse office, Kodiak at their side. The man was polished, his smile practiced, but his eyes flickered when he saw the dog. "Detective Warwick, Officer Hensley," he said, rising from his desk. "What's this about?" "We found Nathan Halverson," Warwick said, watching him like a hawk. "Buried under your old warehouse floor. Murdered." Crane's composure cracked, a tremor in his hand as he reached for a glass of water. "That's horrific." "Where? How?" "Blunt force to the skull," Mara said, her voice steady. "Covered in concrete from coastal build." "You're concrete, Victor." He laughed, a brittle sound. "You're grasping. I had nothing to do with Nathan's disappearance. I was at the gala. Your fingerprint was on his pendant." Warwick cut in, sliding a photo across the desk. "And those ledgers? They show you siphoning funds for years. Nathan found out, didn't he?" Kodiak stood, his gaze locked on Crane, a low growl building. "Why is he doing that?" Crane demanded, stepping back. "He smells death," Mara said simply. "Same scent he found under that floor." Crane's facade shattered. He sank into his chair, hands trembling. "It wasn't planned," he whispered. "Nathan confronted me that night. Said he'd ruin me. I grabbed the wrench. It was over before I knew it." The confession unraveled him. Crane was arrested, charged with murder and fraud. The town of Port Elias exhaled, a wound 15 years old finally closing. Back at the K-9 training field, Mara tossed a ball for Kodiak, his joy undimmed by the weight of what he'd done. Warwick joined her, hands in his pockets. "DA says Crane's pleading guilty," he said. "No trial. The family's planning a memorial." Mara nodded, watching Kodiak bound after the ball. "He doesn't know he changed their lives. Just wants his reward." Warwick chuckled. "Chief's talking about a ceremony. Medal for the mutt." "Kodiak will take a stake over a medal any day," Mara said, grinning. As the sun dipped low, she threw the ball again. Kodiak racing into the twilight, a simple creature who'd brought justice to a town that had almost given up hope. The storm had passed, but Kodiak's work lingered, a reminder that truth, no matter how deeply buried, could still be found by those who knew where to look.